You're listening to Reignite, a podcast about looking at old stories through fresh eyes. I'm Frankie.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And joining us today for a very special N7-day look at Mass Effect Legendary Edition is returning guest from the Lore Party Podcast Network, Abu Zafar, and first-time guest from Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast, Katie L'Esperance. Please tell me I said all of your names correctly, because I did not practice.
It's pretty good.
You nailed it. Good job.
Great. So listeners should remember who Abu is. We are longtime pod friends from Lore Party. Abu, how's Lore Party doing?
Things have been going super well. We actually, I'll tell your listeners all about it more at the end of the show, but we launched our 5th podcast on the network just a week ago. And
nice.
Our Dune podcast has really been taking off and things have been going super well.
What's the new podcast about?
The new podcast is hosted by Lawrence Kelly, who's a longtime producer and host on the team. And the goal with that show is that he's going to sit down and do deep dive interviews with indie game developers, writers, storytellers, programmers, and really kind of get to the core of what inspires them creatively. So not necessarily interviews about the games themselves, but just the creatives behind them.
That's exciting. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
That's cool. Can't imagine why the Dune podcast is taking off. It's not like it's relevant right now or anything.
Right.
Yeah, I it was been fun to watch that path as you and Leo got geekier and geekier as we got closer and closer to the movie.
Yeah.
It's been fun to watch that kind of path go.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
I'll have to decide at the end of this episode whether to run a Gom Jabbar ad or a Lore Party ad. Like, I could really go either way.
Yeah.
I could do both.
Yeah, I mean, I could take the
Crazy with it.
decision off your shoulders and just tell you run both.
There we go. All right, you convinced me. We're also joined by a brand new voice who's yet to be on the show, but will hopefully be on the show again, the incredible Katie L'Esperance from Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast, which I am part of the intro
I was going
for.
to say, I don't know if you would go full bore intro.
I only kind of remember, it's like the video game movie podcast or something.
That
like
was very
that.
similar. That was
Very
kind
similar,
of
yeah.
eerie, actually.
But I'm really excited to have you on. You messaged me pretty early on saying that, you love what we've done and you really were interested in being a part of the conversation since you had never played Mass Effect until the Legendary Edition. And so we're really excited to have you. But before we get into what we're all going to talk about here, tell the folks a little bit about Cutscenes and the kind of podcast it is, what you do, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Cutscenes is a seasonal podcast that I do with 2 friends, Travis Colnut and Jacob McCourt. And Jacob has been on this podcast before, I believe.
Yes, he
That
has.
is true.
So we got together, we started this podcast, which is basically just each episode centers around a different video game, movie, or TV show, like a season of a show. And we get together and we talk about it, and we kind of give our likes or dislikes. We've been friends for a very long time, so we can kind of rib each other pretty freely. So we have a really good time. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun. And season 3 just came out, actually. Just started on, hold please, hold for effect. October 28th, our Final Fantasy episode came out. So
That's the same day that season 4 of our podcast premiered.
yeah, competition
Competition. No, we're
brings
all
out the
working
best
together
in
here.
everybody. It's okay.
Yeah, I got to guest on your Detective Pikachu episode because I begged Jacob.
I was going to mention that. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, because I annoyed Jacob into letting me on, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to annoy Jacob into letting us on to discuss the Paragon Lost movie with me and Frankie. Because, I mean, we've got it now, right? Like, it's just requirement.
I'd make fun of you for that, but bullying people into being my friend is pretty much how I have all of my friends.
It'd be funny, though, because I feel like Travis would be going in blind because he hasn't played Mass Effect, I
Yeah.
don't think. Yeah, so that would actually
he has
be an
played
interesting...
a little bit. He's played the first one, and he just hasn't had time, basically,
Got it.
to start the second one. But yeah, no, I was going to mention that Detective Pikachu, like, if you're interested and you're wondering what the podcast is about, I think that's one of our standout episodes. Like Super Mario Brothers, I had a lot of fun with. Sonic's
Yeah.
really good. Both
Yeah.
our Mortal Kombats. Like, honestly, any
Yeah.
of them, if you want to just give it a listen and see what it's about. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll give you some time to tell folks where they can find it at the end. But let's get into a little bit about what we're here to do. So today we're going to be talking about the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which came out on May 14th of this year. It was released on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. And the idea today is to discuss the new and the old and everything in between as we dive into the remaster, because we have three experienced, overly nerdy fans of the franchise, Frankie, myself, and Abu, and then Katie, who's brand new to the franchise, which I think is really important to talk about, as this remaster it's not a remake. It's a shiny coat of paint on something that isn't changed too terribly much. I think before we get too far, though, we should talk about where we all played it. I played it on the PS5, technically the PS4 version. What about the rest of y'all?
Xbox 360. No, that's wrong.
No.
Xbox One. I forget.
You got
new
it in
one.
two. The new one.
Not the newest one. The one that's after that. I don't know. I'm tired.
The X-Bone. It's fine.
The
You're
X-Bone.
good.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I also played the PS4 version on the PS5. See, the numbers is a lot easier to keep track
Yeah.
of. It makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. But yeah, so I
That's
played it on
fair.
that also.
I will accept that dig.
Right. And it seems like we're split evenly because then I played on Xbox. So we're
Hey.
50-50.
Nice.
But yeah,
No
I played
PC
it on that
players.
Xbox Series S that I have.
Ooh, fancy.
I know.
I haven't
Very,
got
very
my hands
fancy.
on one yet.
I mean, you and many, many, many other people.
I know.
Also, I'm curious, although I know for me and Frankie, but we can say, but femshep or male shep? I made a male shep. I know Frankie made a femshep.
Mm-hmm.
But what about Katie and then Abu?
Femshep all the way.
Hell yeah.
I did male ship. And in fact, I didn't even customize it. It was just the default male ship face. I just really wanted to get
Love
back
it.
into the game, you know?
Yeah, didn't really care about creating a character. Yeah, I had to test out the creator features because, like, starting to talk about the game itself, there were more creation options this time around for making your character, but not enough. I feel like it's definitely better than the base game, but like when I recently started playing Andromeda for season 4, there are still a lot more options in Andromeda.
Yeah.
So first, Katie, and then I'll go to the rest of us. Katie, did you feel like the character creator allowed you to capture what you wanted your shep to look like, or not really?
I got there. Like you said, it's not expansive, especially these days. Like typically, like AAA games where you can create your own character are really, really in depth. But like it was enough that I'm like, no, I'm good with this. And then by the end, I was like, this is her. This is my shepherd. Like the end. There is no other. And I see pictures of others. I'm like, who is that shepherd? That's not shepherd. But so it served the purpose. Like I got what I wanted out of it.
Awesome. I mean, Abu already said that he just jumped right in. So,
Yeah.
But like I know for me, like I felt like it looked more like me than previous shepherds in the old version did, or even my Reignite playthrough shepherd. But I was not super happy with it. I know that Frankie, you were completely unhappy because they didn't have your hair color because they don't believe in blue for some reason.
Yes, I have come to terms with the fact that Shepard is just never going to look like me no matter what I do. I wear glasses, I'm plus size, I have brightly colored hair, my hair is long. Shepard is never going to look like me. It's just never going to happen. And I have to accept that. The closest I could get, my Shepard wound up looking like Scorpia. And I'm just like, I give up! I give up!
I mean, I think it's important to recognize that, we all went into, well, at least 3 of us went into the Legendary Edition knowing that they were only freshening up, the paint, as it were. They weren't remaking it from the ground up. Katie, did you have any expectations based on the advertising and the stories that came out leading up to it of what it might look like, sound like, be like? Or were you just kind of going in blind, just knowing you wanted to play this game?
I didn't have much. I knew that. So a few years ago, I had just tried to play it on PC because it was on sale on Steam. And like over the years, I'd heard more and more and more about it. And I was like, well, I got to play this game because so many people are so passionate about this series. So I bought it, downloaded it, and then started to play it. And then was like, I don't know. This feels really dated. It's not great. I know people say the second one's better, but I was like, I just wasn't feeling it. And especially like on PC, I definitely preferred on console. But so I kind of had an idea of what it would resemble, and like that you're on the ship and like what the characters look like and all this stuff. But I had an idea, but not a whole lot. I was just like, I'm jumping in. I'm going to see what this is about, and we're going to see if I like it. And yeah, no, I got hooked pretty quickly.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that tends to be how it goes. It's similar to all of our experiences, just knowing Abu having told his origin story back in season 1 and me and Frankie talking about it at length. Mass Effect, either you bounce off it completely or it totally ropes you in. There seems to not be a lot of middle ground, so I'm not really surprised by that.
Yeah, I did both. I bounced off, and then the second time I was like, no, I'm good. Yeah, I did both.
Exactly. Amazing. Let's talk about the classes we played, because I know that, Frankie, you went back to Vanguard, right? You were like tired of the BS and wanted to go back to your favorite class.
It wasn't so much that I was tired of Sentinel, but like I did want to play my favorite class and see if there was any change to it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I played an engineer, which I'd never played in Mass Effect 3 before, but I believe I'd played in 1 and 2. Abu, what class did you choose this time around?
I stuck with Sentinel all the way through, which is not the original class that I played when I first played the games. I think when I originally played, I jumped between Vanguard and Biotic. And this time around, I just really wanted to play around with the powers. So I figured Sentinel would give me that balance between tech and Biotic.
That makes a lot of sense. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your favorite is Infiltrator, right? You tend to prefer Infiltrator?
Yeah, Infiltrator was the class that I think I stuck with the most for most of my playthroughs back in the day when I played the OG games. And this time I just stuck with Sentinel all the way through. I committed to it.
Cool. What about you, Katie?
First playthrough ever. I played a boring ass soldier.
The whole way through?
Yeah. Yes. I was like, no, Matt is my shepherd, and she is a soldier. And then I was like, oh, there's like a lot of cool stuff that other people can do that I can't do. I can tell them to do those things, but like I can't do it myself. But I fully intend to replay it one day, like in the near future, actually. And I will play something more interesting. But I was like, I don't know what this game is, so I'm going to be a soldier.
Look, sticking with what you know, right? You fired guns in other games. You're going to fire guns in this game.
I like the shooty McShoot.
So Katie just mentioned that she's going to do another playthrough. I've only done one playthrough of the Legendary Edition, and then I started a second one as FemShep, my preferred Shep, because I love Jennifer Hale, the voice actress. Frankie, have you done more than one yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. But do you intend to do multiple playthroughs?
Yes, I do. I haven't really had time or energy, especially since we've been working on Andromeda. I got 2/3 of the way through an Andromeda replay, trying to map it out for Reignite, and then something didn't go the way I planned, and I was like, well, time to walk into the ocean and die.
Oh, man.
So, that's where I'm at emotionally.
Fair enough. What about you, Abu? Have you only done the one playthrough so far?
Yeah, so I played Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 in the Legendary Edition. I actually just recently beat it, 2 weeks ago, so really excellent timing in inviting me on.
Awesome.
But I definitely do plan on revisiting for yet again another playthrough, because I played Male Shep, but I got to experience the game as FemShep. So I do plan to go through the entire Legendary Edition again, probably this time at a much slower pace. I felt like I wanted to just see all 3 games in the Legendary Edition this time, so I mostly did the required quests and some of the odd ones here and there that I knew would add some world building and stuff to it. And this time around, I wanted to play all the DLC that I didn't get to back when I first played the games. I was a kid when I played the games back then and didn't have the allowance money to buy all the DLCs. Now I'm a grown-up, and I can buy whatever I want. So I just wanted to experience all the DLCs, and I kind of felt like I blasted through a lot of Mass Effect 2 and 3 because both of those are so DLC-heavy games. And so on my second playthrough, I intend to go much slower and probably try to do a little achievement hunting, try to finish up all of those side quests that I left on the first run.
Yeah, I didn't rush through it. I think I did a good majority of the side quests, but I definitely was at a brisker pace just because I wanted to see it through to the end and kind of finish this this chapter as you will, if you would, like, just have a complete playthrough. Whereas my femshep, I mean, I was talking to Boo about this offline, you know, like normal people who hang out outside of podcasts, about how Mass Effect is one of the few games that I can pick up at any time, and it doesn't matter what mission I'm at, I can figure out where I am in the game. Like some RPGs that you pick up after putting down for a long time, you're kind of like, what the hell was I doing? I don't know where I'm going. But that has almost never happened with me with Mass Effect, so I'm content to like pick it up every couple of months and play for a while and then put it back down. I'm curious now, like, I feel like graphically it looks really good, especially considering having replayed the original trilogy for Reignite so recently. Like, everything looks to me as sharp as Mass Effect 3 does. Mass Effect 3 will always be the best looking of the three of them, but like I feel like it looked much better. Before we get Katie's take on like having no experience and how she thought it looked, I'm curious, Frankie, your thoughts on like the higher res models, the better sound. Like, did you know, was it noticeably different to you from the first game?
Yes.
Yeah.
It for sure was. I took screenshots way more often than I have been because, first of all, my Shepard actually looked like a person for the first time. I was just like, this person does not look like me, but it does look like a person. And that felt like an achievement in and of itself. And also there was a lot more texture. Mm-hmm. And you could see things that were supposed to be cloth look more like cloth instead of just being this kind of plasticky sheen that was in the original version.
Yeah, totally. Abu, what about you? Did you think the graphics were greatly improved?
Oh, yeah. The graphics kind of finally looked like I thought they looked like back in 2007 when I first fired up Mass Effect. It's hard to think back and remember how it looked on the Xbox 360, but and on like that tiny TV I had in my bedroom at the time. But now I played it on this incredible OLED 4K, 120 hertz, HDR, like, you know, all of the fancy acronyms for everything. We have this incredible TV in the living room now. So not only did I play it on a gorgeous TV, but I played it on a next-gen console, 60 FPS, and it looks great. Obviously, Mass Effect 1 was the game that got the biggest upgrade visually, and 2 and 3 were probably just polish here and there just to get them matching as much as possible to 3's fidelity. But I think Mass Effect 1 felt like a brand new game, having played the original.
Katie, since I know you do play other games and like you've been playing current gen stuff, how did you feel the games stacked up graphically to what you've played before? Did you still get a sense of wonder? Did you feel like it looked really good, or did you feel like it kind of lacked comparatively?
I thought it looked great. I mean, obviously, like current AAA games look better, but it did not feel like a dated game playing it. Like you can tell that it's a remaster. Like you can kind of tell that it's an older game remastered, but it did not feel dated at all. Like honestly, it was pretty to look at. Like I enjoyed all the like I thought the facial animation was pretty good. Yeah. Not like top tier, but really effective. Like all the people's, I could tell what they were feeling, what they were thinking. Like no, I thought they did a great job.
And what about the controls? Because like notoriously, Mass Effect is kind of the first game is kind of unplayable control wise. It's hard to aim. The guns have this weird sway and stuff. And like you had none of that prior knowledge going into it. So did you feel it controlled pretty tightly comparatively to other shooters you've played?
Kind of the same thing. It's not top tier, but it did not feel super dated. Like, you know, you pick up like, you know, they're putting out the GTA remaster. You play an old GTA, you're like, what are these controls? I can't do at all what I want to do. Like I can kind of do it, but not really.
Yeah.
So no, it didn't feel like that at all. Like it felt like a functional, good shooter, which it improved through the 3 games. Like you can tell, you can make there's an obvious improvement, but no, it didn't feel dated where it felt uncomfortable to play like older games. Not that it's that old, to be honest, but yeah, some older games, it's very apparent and it's kind of difficult and cumbersome. It didn't feel cumbersome at all.
And I know I speak for Abu and Frankie when I say, hallelujah, Mass Effect 1 was playable this time around.
Yeah.
I've heard horror stories, and I was like, yeah, the Mako's not great, but I know it's like 10 times better than it used to be from what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, you bringing up the weapon sway just gave me flashbacks, especially as a player who stuck with Infiltrator for the first couple of games. That sniper sway is just impossible until you level up and get the better gear, and that eventually goes away. But I'm glad they got rid of that.
Yeah, I like the freedom that the control had. And like I feel like that first stage where you lose Jenkins, RIP, we miss him. That first area where you fight the drones, like I feel like when I would play it on old consoles, when we played it for Reignite, I was like, I can't hit these stupid little things. They won't. And like it was pretty precise in the remaster, and that's how I knew. I was like, ooh, okay, I can actually play this game. You know, I mean, I would play Mass Effect 1 a lot, and I just kind of accepted or put it on easier difficulty, which is all fine, and you know, anything you can do to make it more accessible for yourself. But like, it was nice to be able to go back to it now and be like, oh, like this isn't a chore to play the action parts of this first game, because the story is impeccable still, but like it was nice for it to not feel like a chore. Frankie, I'm curious, going back to Mass Effect 1 so closely after because a little inside baseball, Frankie and I started at, Mass Effect Legendary Edition during Season 3 of Reignite, and so we eventually caught up to Mass Effect 3 during still playing the older games. Did you ever feel a difference between the control like in the third game when we were going between the two, or at that point it was pretty similar?
At that point, it was pretty similar. The thing that happened to me was that I forgot I was no longer a Vanguard when I went back to the Reignite playthrough away from the personal playthrough. So I would go into the Reignite playthrough and like hit a button and be like, that's not what that was supposed to do. What am I doing? What's happening here?
Yeah, I feel like when we were playing Mass Effect 1 during working on 3 for the show, like there's less confusion because they're such vastly different control-wise. But as you get closer, it's like, wait, what am I playing again? How many games? What am I doing? As someone who used to try and balance multiple playthroughs at once on the Xbox 360, I don't know how I could even do that now. Like my brain is like, nope, one thing at a time, Matt. You can't do all of these things at once. I'm curious, Katie, what you thought about the storytelling. You know, you're completely new to this series. Did you really, I mean, I assume since you said you got completely hooked this time around that you got really wrapped up in the narrative and the story.
I was so impressed. Like, I can't even tell you. So, okay, not only all the characters are just so well developed, like, so almost all of them, I'll get to that, but they're just so good, and they're all detailed enough, and you feel like you're getting to know people. Whereas I feel like a lot of other games, they're like, oh, you thought this person was like this, but actually they're like this. And it doesn't feel like that. Like, I don't feel like my opinion of these people is changing dramatically. It's like I'm slowly getting to know them. Like, I had like a little moment during the house party in Mass Effect 3 when it's a stupid little thing, but I had like a little like, oh, that's why I really love this, is that there's a thing in the middle of the night, because I threw a rager, because of course I did. Cause
of course you did.
My
How
shepherd plays hard. You know, she's a little stern, but she plays hard. James all of a sudden is like, who wants eggs? I make the best eggs. You want eggs? You got to try my eggs. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I didn't expect him to do that. And then I was like, oh no, of course he's that guy. That makes perfect sense for James. Like, of course he is. And then I was like, oh, that's how I feel about all these people. Where I'm like, I feel like I'm getting to know them. And I feel like I'm like, oh, we're better friends now. Even though, you know, they're not real. But they felt real.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad to hear that as someone who didn't have the attachment. Because, I mean, I know for me, like, that's why I love these games. Like, the story's great and all. But, like, the character relationships, the romancing aliens, all of that stuff, you know, in all seriousness, is, like, what brings you closer to these characters. Before we move on, I do have to ask, who did you romance?
Oh, my God. Okay, so Mass Effect 1, for, you know, just kind of by default, Kaidan. Kaidan's the worst. Okay, Kaidan.
Oh no!
Kaidan is useless. Why is he there? He does nothing.
I'm so sorry. This is a Caden Stan account.
I'm sorry. I'm coming in strong. Caden is literally like, hey, I grew up, like, I had a hard moment when I was a kid, and I really like you. And that's Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 2, I don't know, I'm kind of mad at you, and that's it. And I might like you, but I'm not sure. And then Mass Effect 3 is, I like you again. That's all he does. He doesn't do anything else. I never brought him along because I'm like, you are the most boring human, and nothing else is happening. Other characters, they have other things are going on in their lives and like other motivations, and they're like, no, I have these feelings about, you know, what happened with the Krogans and and that's affecting how they talk to other people. Caden has none of that. Nothing affects anything. He's just like, I'm a good soldier, and I like Shepard. The end. So I have strong feelings. But anyway, so then, you know, the next ones, I was like, yeah, whatever, Caden. He's like, I still like you. I was like, yeah, sure. Just go over there. It's fine. I'm so sorry, but
no,
I can't lie about how I feel. Caden did nothing for me.
No, it's funny only because like I felt a similar way to Caden the first time I played the games, but in our Reignite playthrough, I went out of my way to actually explore his backstory, talk to him more, find out things. And if you dig, you get a lot more. But you're right, on the surface level, him and Ashley and a lot of the other human characters kind of get the short end of the stick if you don't explore more of their backstory. I feel like as a male shepherd, also, like, Caden's queerness adds a lot to that narrative.
Oh, I did not know that.
Because in the third, he's canonically bisexual, and in the third game, you can romance him as male shepherd, which I did for Reignite. And so I feel like that adds a lot more depth to the kind of person he is. I think there's a lot of bisexual erasure for the character since he's suddenly bisexual narrative choice-wise in the third game. But, you know, you're not the first person to say this stuff. And typically Ashley or Caden get the short end of the stick for similar reasons.
I would love to go back. When I replay, I'm like, well, I have to save Ashley. Because at least there's something. There is growth there that could happen. I'm like, oh, you're questionable. But I could see,
sorry.
I had hopes. I was like, maybe she'll get interesting.
So I actually have opinions about Ashley. I really wanted that same growth that you want, and unfortunately they dropped the ball with her. They don't really give her those opportunities. I rescued her because of this sense of sisterhood between
I felt so
and
conflicted.
Ashley.
Absolutely.
Right. You know, that moment where she talked about how she traveled across the galaxy just to walk her sister to school because her sister had been harassed by a boy. Like, that really stuck with me, and I thought there was something in that kind of sisterly solidarity, and then they didn't actually follow through with it, and yeah, they did all of the human characters dirty. Like, they could have done better by Caden, they could have done better by Ashley, they absolutely could have done better by Jacob.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up Jacob. I feel like Miranda was maybe the only human character that wasn't shortchanged. Like, all of the alien characters are so interesting, have such incredible backstories. Katie, like you're saying, have connections to other parts of the universe and lore. Like, Rex is so deeply involved and invested in curing the genophage. It affects him, his people, his life. Grunt, trying to figure out who he is, where he fits in. All of the characters, the alien characters at least, have their places in the universe. And it just feels like the human characters are just there to be accessories to Shepard to some extent.
Like, I like James, but he doesn't really go anywhere.
Exactly.
But I ended up liking him a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah, I think in our Reignite playthrough, I ended up liking Jacob. Not Jacob. I mean, I like Jacob enough, but like James, I liked a lot. Also because I've grown to like Freddie Prinze Jr. a lot. He's a very active and supportive nerd and very vocal in the nerd community for, like, you know, just all sorts of sweeping equalities and fair treatment and kind of that kind of stuff. And so that just automatically rolled over to me liking him in this a lot more. And I would agree with Miranda, like, at least in the third game, she gets closure with her father and, like, with her sister. And, like, they close the loop on those stories. But, like, nothing for the other characters in the same way unless you romance Caden or Ashley. I feel like then their stories kind of have something more because it's attached to Shepard, which is a shame. They should independently be that. But something important we didn't get to, Katie, is who did you romance in the second and third games?
I was going to say, I'll do these a little quicker. Mass Effect 2, Garrus. He is my ride or die best friend and sometimes lover. Because it's Garrus. I was like, yo, you're my best friend.
It's a popular choice.
Well, yeah, it's Garrus. Of course he is.
Right.
Mass Effect 3 was kind of odd because I kind of got into the situation and then was like, oh, okay, I guess so. And then it became a thing. Trainer. Samantha Trainer. All of a sudden, she's like, hey, you want to come up to my room? And I was like, I mean, I wasn't thinking about that, but yeah, okay. And next thing you know, stuff's going down. And then I'm like, okay, I'm on board with this. This is good. I like you, you know. And then she's like, and I've joined this ship, and now I've met the love of my life. I was like, whoa. Who? Love of our lives. I don't know. I misrepresented things, but I don't know if it was that far. But I ended up being okay with it. It was kind of like a comm center because she wasn't a squad mate. It was like I was kind of like going home to the ship and like reuniting with Trainer. I was okay with it, but still, I was like, oh, love of your life is strong. But you know, we'll talk about it later. It's okay.
I love that. That's great. I mean, I love I'm losing her name in the moment, but voice actress who plays Trainer is very good, and like she's gone on record talking about that femme relationship because she has two mothers. There's a lot of queerness in her life, and so to see how they lovingly did a good job with that relationship with Trainer and Shepard meant a lot to her, and so it's cool to hear that you kind of found your way into it, and then we're like, oh, cool, all right, I love that.
Do you guys have like your preferred go-to romances that you always go to?
So Frankie is the biggest Garrus fan you'll ever.
Garrus, I love. Honestly, Mass Effect 3, I was like, well, I have to romance Garrus again because I love Garrus, and then it just didn't. And then I was like, oh, now this is happening. I'm sorry, Garrus, but Garrus is cool. That's why Garrus is so great. Garrus is chill. He's like, that's okay. We're best friends. Like, you know, he's never like, hey, I guess you're with her now. He's like, hey, Shep, we're cool.
Yeah, unlike Caden, who's like, I could forgive you for cheating on me.
Oh my god. I flirted with Jacob and then broke it off, and he was mad about it for like, you know, many missions. I'm like, all right, calm down, Jacob. Nothing happened.
I can't remember, Abu. Were you Liara the whole way through? I can't remember.
On this Legendary Edition run, yeah, I was Liara the whole way through. When I originally played, we talked about my many foibles with romance in my original playthrough.
You're basic.
Yeah, my real like basic choices all throughout. It was awful. I mean, I went with Ashley in the first game, and then in the second game, I went with Miranda. You know, I went with just like the basic white hot girls with the big butts. And in the Mass Effect 3, I forget. I think I probably circled back to Ashley because I felt bad, but I don't recall the first time.
That's pretty basic, yeah.
Yeah, very basic romance life my first time. This time I decided I'm not going to bounce around. Let me see what the emotional arc feels like if I commit through all three games. And with Liara, it's a little tough because she has only a smaller role in 2, and then she kind of comes back in 3, and the romance comes full circle. But I loved the romance with Liara this time. I think committing through all three games made that final goodbye a legitimate tearjerker moment where she leaves on the Normandy and she's like, no, Shepard, come here. And it's just this, like, you know, it's a goodbye where they both know we're not going to see each other again. And particularly, I think Shepard knows, like, this is it. Like, I'm going up this beam thing and I'm probably not going to see anyone again. So, yeah, my romance journey this time definitely hit harder than my original romances. And I'm excited to see what my options are when I play through again as FemShep. Because I kind of just stuck with a hot blue lady all the way through this time. Maybe as FemShep, I'll experiment a bit more.
Yeah, for me, so my reignite playthrough, I fell for Caden, but couldn't romance him in the first one, so I romanced no one. I fell for Jack and romanced Jack in the second one, and then when Candy came back into my life, I romanced Caden, and Jack was pretty cool with it. for my canonical shepherd is a redheaded femme shep that I made called Rain Shepherd. She was my original Xbox 360 playthrough. Her canonical love interest was Liara in the first game, and then Thane in 2 and 3, which is like so heartbreaking, but such a great romance. And so that's like my canonical. And then for the Legendary Edition, I did Tali. I did no one in the first game, male shepherd, and then Tali all the way through. And like, Abu, I'm glad you brought up like the narrative circle, because I remember talking to Frankie about this. Tali is a great character, full stop. But when you romance her in 2 and 3, the full story, when you finish Rannoch, and if you save her people, like, it's such a beautiful relationship moment, because you talk about building a home together on the home world, and you get to really like talk to her, and like it's just another tear-jerking moment, which already was, because we R.I.P. Legion, we love you. He's alive in all of us, technically, according to the game.
Way to make it creepy.
But like, that was so beautiful. And what I love about the Legendary Edition is, like, even having played this game as many times as I have, I'm still experiencing new moments. I mean, folks know who listen to the show, I have only played 3 a few times, whereas I played 1 and 2 a bunch. And so like, I feel like there's still so much more to explore. And so I don't know who I'm going to romance with my FemShep playthrough. Canonically, it was Liara and then Thane when I originally did it, but maybe I'll do Liara the whole way through this time. I don't know. I'm curious if there were standout characters for you, Katie, as you played through. I mean, you mentioned Garrus, who's your best friend. Like, the internet knows that I love my lizard son, Grunt. He's the child I never had.
I love Grunt. Absolutely.
He's the best. But were there any other characters that really stood out to you, even non-playable characters, like, that you really, really liked?
So first of all, Liara I always liked Liara, but she kind of sneaks up on you, because I feel like she's hard to get to know. But then, because she's harder to get to know, by Mass Effect 3, you're like, you have a really tight bond, because it took so long to, like, I don't know, not gain trust, but like kind of like reveal things, like you're to be like both vulnerable to each other. So it felt like, oh, we're like deep friends now. And I felt really good about it. Rex, love Grunt, because Grunt's like, your little son, like you said, you're like shepherding him, shepherding him through, and you're like, oh, you can do it, man. And then what else? I ended up liking James more than I thought. I actually liked Jack, just because I love how dry and kind of sarcastic she is, and then she slowly softens up and, like, you know, starts to trust people. Non-party, well, I guess in the DLC she's party, but Arya T'Loak I was like, oh, you are formidable, and I just like talking to you, because I like listening to what you say, just because the way you say it is just like, I'm hanging on every word. So I really liked her a lot.
Carrie-Anne Moss is one of the best performances in the whole game, like in the whole series, especially the Omega DLC, which at launch we didn't have at 3, like really does a lot for that character. That's something I wanted to ask you, Katie, before we talk more about favorite characters, is I know for me, as someone coming back to the game, that the fact that they dump all of the DLC in your objective list in 2 and 3, was that confusing to you, or did you just kind of just go about it? Like, because it felt confusing to me as an experienced player.
It did a little bit, but once you kind of got into the mission, it became very apparent that it was a long standalone DLC moment, because it's a lengthy mission. They're like, 3 hours long or something. And its own story, its own squad mates. So it was kind of obvious once you were in it, but like I didn't know hopping into that mission that it would end up being like a very long DLC mission. Yeah. But they were all very good. So I was never like, oh, now I'm stuck in this mission and I don't like it. Like, no, I liked them all. They were all great.
Abu and Frankie, I'm curious, coming back to this series, did you find favorites that you didn't have before, or characters that you hadn't spent time with? Like, I know for me, like I said, I'd never done the Tali romance, and like I already liked that character, but I grew to really love that character in a way I didn't think I could. You know, I still say, personally, for me, the Shadow Broker DLC is some of the best DLC in the franchise. I just like confronting the Shadow Broker. I love that fight feels like a boss fight. When he stands up from behind that table and knocks it away, like, those kind of moments don't really exist a lot. But like, I guess we'll go to Abu first. Abu, did you like rediscover anything that you weren't that hyped about the first time through, or like nuances you noticed that you hadn't before?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I came in with my biases, right? Like I was just like, Garrus, I love you from the second I met him. And Thane, you're so cool from the second I met him. Like I had these preconceived notions and relationships from years and years ago with a lot of these characters. And what I found interesting is I enjoyed much more the arcs for Jack. I know we have some Jack stands in the room. You know, my original playthrough with Jack, I was just like, I don't like her. I don't like her vibes. She's mean and scary and unlikable. I'm not going to bother to even like, you know, go through conversations with her. And this time I did. I talked to her every chance I got. I brought her on missions with me. And then seeing her arc into becoming someone who, you know, has this horrific experience early in life and then turns that because of Shepard's influence into something where she is a mentor and a teacher and someone to look up to for this like new wave of biotics and these new kids. That I think I grew to have a new appreciation for. And the other character that I got to know better, and I'm kind of shocked I ignored her in my original playthroughs, was actually Tali. And I kind of lied. I didn't stick with Liara all the way through. I mean, I ultimately romanced Liara, but there was a hiccup in Mass Effect 3 at one point where I accidentally, let's call it, started romancing Tali because I just kept talking to her. Because again, a character that I didn't talk that much to or get to know that much originally, I decided, hey, I'm going to talk to her every chance I get and learn more of her arc and her character and backstory. I ended up accidentally like leading her on to the point where it kind of came down to like Liara and Tali both approaching me every time I talked to them and being like, we need a decision from you, Shepard. Like, you need to pick me or her. And, I ultimately stuck with Liara. But I got to the point where I was that close with Tali, to the point where it could have been turned into something romantic. And I think getting to that point with her made her arc something that was much more emotional to experience, particularly, Matt, like you said, all the stuff that happens on Rannog. And then having that conversation with her after about, this is my home planet. I've never touched the sands of my planet. I'm going to build a home for myself here. And that was much more impactful after getting so close to Tali this time around. So those were two characters, Tali and Jack, that I didn't get to know as much as I clearly should have my first time around. And I'm glad I did this time.
I mean, I know, Frankie, you've played this game so many times. So was there anything, I guess I'll broaden the question for you, but was there anything new you discovered that you'd never seen before in the trilogy?
Nope.
Amazing. That's so funny.
I'm very obsessive. I've been through literally everything multiple times. Honestly, I discovered way more during the Reignite playthrough of the original versions than I did during Legendary. And I'm still discovering things after the fact. Like, I discovered that there are 2 scenes in Citadel that I have never seen. And, like, now I have to play again so I can go catch those scenes. There's a scene with Joker at the bar and a scene with Rex at the bar.
Oh, I didn't know there was a Rex one.
Yeah, and because they don't end up in your queue, so to speak. Like, they don't send you an email being like, hey, meet me at the bar like everybody else does. They just expect you to find them there.
Yeah.
You have to go to the bar and wait for them. And that's it. So those are the only 2 things that I still have not discovered for myself, that I only found out about because other people posted about them. So those are the only 2 scenes that I have never seen for myself.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about how we feel this game compares to the original. I think we've touched on this a bit, but I think for the returning players, it's pretty unanimous that this is the ideal way to play the original trilogy. Any love lost for Pinnacle Station among us? I mean, I know I hated it. Yeah, I didn't think so.
Pinnacle
Boo,
what?
do you miss Pinnacle Station?
Pinnacle
yeah,
where?
Exactly. There's a DLC in the first game called Pinnacle Station, which is essentially a shooting range with some light story elements. Like Jacob is actually supposedly stationed on that ship, and you can he's a NPC that you can kind of click on but not really interact with. But apparently the source code for that DLC got lost somehow, and when they were putting everything in the Legendary Edition, they just couldn't restore that one DLC, and so it's not in the Legendary Edition. But there's not a lot of love lost for it, since it was a glorified shooting range with not much story.
And Armax did it better.
That's true. The Armax Arena in Citadel is a lot of fun. But I think for me, I can't imagine going back to the original PC release I have. Unless I want to play multiplayer in the third game, I guess, which they took out of the Legendary Edition. But beyond that, for me, it's easily the definitive way to play this trilogy. Abu, do you agree?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is the only way to play Mass Effect now, and I think particularly as someone who missed out on a lot of the DLCs, this is also the complete package for Mass Effect.
Yeah. And
thinking back, I'm like, oh wow, how did I play Mass Effect 3 without experiencing Leviathan?
Yeah.
Without doing the Citadel missions and defeating my clone. Mass Effect 3 now feels incomplete if you miss out on those experiences. And so, yeah, this is not just graphically, not just technically, but also considering the DLC and how complete the stories now are, this really is the only way to play.
Frankie, I assume you agree.
I do agree. And also, Abu mentioned that if you missed out on the DLC, this is the only way to play. There are a lot of Mass Effect fans in different regions who never got access to DLC because it wasn't available in their region for whatever reason. So this is the only way they can finally experience these storylines that make the game feel so much more complete. The Citadel is really the only true DLC of Mass Effect because every other DLC adds to the lore. Actually, I will say Citadel and Omega, because Leviathan gives you so much more context for everything going on in the world of Mass Effect that shouldn't have been DLC. Same with From Ashes. From Ashes gives you a squad mate that provides context for the entire story and experience. Can you imagine playing the game without Javik?
Yeah, Javik was pre-order DLC in the original Mass Effect 3. If you didn't pre-order the game and get a special edition of it, you didn't get Javik.
No way.
Yeah.
Yep, there are tons of folks
that
who
feels
played
so
through...
important. I had no idea that was DLC.
Right?
Yep.
Imagine all of Mass Effect 3.
It brings it full circle. It brings it that thing that we've been talking about from Mass Effect 1 is now here. I cannot believe that. That's nuts. That was a part that I would not have known at all that was DLC.
And him at the end being like, I think I'm going to write that book with Liara after this is all over, after we defeat the Reapers.
That's great.
I was like, oh my God, I'm going to cry. He's going to finally write that book. Liara's just hammering him with questions. And if you look in her little Shadow Broker console, one of the notes she has on her computer is all of these work in progress titles for the book that she wants to write. And they're so funny. And the fact that little note became a piece of dialogue that Javik says to me in the very end, where I know my shepherd is going to die. So good. And I just can't imagine Mass Effect 3 without Javik now. He's too critical to the whole story.
Yes, I agree. So I think that a lot of this DLC is highly important to the gameplay experience because it gives you a lot of context and a lot of brings the game to more of a completeness. You could play all of Mass Effect without Citadel. Citadel is fun and amazing and you should play it, but if it didn't exist, the game would still feel complete.
Yeah, without Javik, it keeps the Protheans as this abstract thing that's in the past. And without him, it's not as real as everything else that you're encountering. So yeah, I liked it a lot.
Also, Katie wouldn't know this, but the ending of the game when you chose, and I'm going to ask you in a moment which of the three choices you made. We'll all talk about that. In the original game, when you made one of those three choices, you saw the beam of light go out across the galaxy, you saw the Normandy land, and that was it. The prologue, when someone's narrating all the changes that happened, wasn't in the original release of the game. They ended up adding that later because there was a bit of a backlash from the community that it just felt incomplete. It was unsatisfactory. For you, having played this trilogy for the first time complete now, did you feel satisfied with how it ended?
I was fine with it.
Okay.
I didn't. I don't know. I don't know how you end. Endings are hard. Like,
Yeah.
how do you end something like that? Like, it's a massive story with so much going on, and that you're so attached to everything. And I don't know how you make a like perfect ending. I don't think it exists. So I felt satisfied. I was
Okay.
fine with it. I wasn't like, oh man, that ending was perfect and like it hit all the spots and I will never forget the ending. Like that's not the part of Mass Effect that I think about at all. I don't think about the ending. The ending honestly isn't that important to me
Right.
at all. But but it didn't make me mad. Like I wasn't disappointed or upset about it.
What did it surprise you every time a decision came back in a later game that like, oh, this choice I made, it affected
Oh my
this
God.
thing?
When like even like stuff like Rex is leading the Krogans now, it's like, well, what if Rex had died? Like, what if he wasn't here? I'm sure there would be someone else leading the Krogans, but
Yeah.
I'm like, but it wouldn't be Rex, and I'm
Right.
like, it would be just some random Krogan. Like, ugh, I don't care about that. No, I was really really impressed with that, and also just in general the to kind of to do with that, how clear the dialogue options are, where it's very simple and apparent. Like if you go on anything on this side, you're getting more information, you're continuing the conversation. Anything on the right side, you're kind of moving it forward in some way. At the top is more Paragon, at the bottom is more Renegade. You kind of know what you're doing. As opposed to some games that do that, you kind of are guessing about how your decision, how what you're saying is going to be perceived or how it's going to go. And there's still some of that. Like obviously sometimes you say something and you're like, that's not what I wanted that to be.
Yeah.
It's not how that was supposed to go, but like far less than I think any other game that I've played, really. Like I thought it was like extremely well executed.
Yeah, I'm always curious about people experiencing that now, like because there's just not a lot of games that do that kind of decision transition, like that,
And do
that
it so
affects-
well.
Right.
Through 3 games. And there's a lot of them. Like sometimes they'll have a couple decisions and it'll affect like these 5 things and like that's it. But I feel like it's just like so ingrained because all the characters are interacting with each other and they all have like perceptions of each other. And like, yeah, I can't imagine making completely different decisions and then it would feel like a completely different story. So
Yeah.
no, it kind of blew my mind how detailed the story decisions were.
And ultimately, which of the 3 endings did you choose? What decision did you make for humanity? Did you choose destroy, control, or synthesis?
One more thing before I say that is that basically also is that your decisions are like historically relevant. It's not like now this person's mad at you and they're not going to talk to you in the next game. Like, no,
Yeah.
you're changing how the universe is, what path the universe is taking. And
Yeah.
like the lore and the history of all the races, because it is so relevant. Whereas a lot of games, like I said, like it's just not executed as well, where you know the history of this race and whatever. But no, that is completely relevant to like present day and the decisions that you're making. And then it makes the decisions so much harder where you're like, oh, the Krogans have been dealing with this, but I see where the Turians are coming from. Like
Yeah.
the history behind it makes those decisions way harder. And
Yeah.
usually it's a lot more surface level than that. So that's it. I'm done with that.
One of the things that I remember Frankie and I talking a lot about in season 3 is the brilliance in which they take the enemy that are akin to like cannon fodder, Nazis in most video games, like people you don't feel bad about shooting. Because I don't feel bad about shooting Nazis ever on record in games. The Geth are nameless enemies. And by the 3rd game, you realize that the Turians committed genocide and like you actually feel bad for them. Like that kind of storytelling is weaved throughout the games. And I'm so glad that you picked up on all of that, not having the attachment to it that we all had.
Well, yeah, especially when the lore is that important to the story, it makes it more rewarding to read everything and talk to everyone and like really invest yourself in the lore, because it's not just there to know. It's
Right.
like it is relevant to everything that's going on. So I cannot say enough about it. It's better executed than anything I've played.
Actually, because we haven't asked you this, and it's my favorite question to ask. I think Frankie knows what it is. In A House Divided, which is when you take Legion to fight the heretics and have to decide whether to rewrite the Geth or kill the Geth, which decision did you pick?
That was the hardest one.
Yes, it is.
Of the entire game for me. I literally sat and stared at the screen. I was like, but Tally's my friend. And like, and she's a good friend of mine. And I felt a loyalty that I was like, I should go with what Tally wants. But I'm like, but the Geth didn't actually do anything. Like, they were raised to be slaves, basically. And then they were like, we're done being slaves. And I was like, well, I can't blame them for that. And I just stared at it for a very long time. That was, it was upsetting. Oh, God. I rewrote the Geth. And then Tally jumped off a cliff. And it broke me a little bit. Oh,
you're talking about the decision in the third
Oh, is this a different decision?
Yeah, when you do Legion's loyalty mission.
Oh, I rewrote them. That was not as hard. Oh. No, it was the Quarian versus Geth one that I was just like, it destroyed me. I didn't know what to do. And then I didn't know that I liked my decision, but I went with it.
Well, just there is a way to make that happen where you get everything that you want. So you should play through again.
Oh, no. Rewriting the Geth, I did not have as hard a time, actually.
Okay. Interesting.
No, the Quarian Geth was way, way harder.
So I can't remember, Frankie, if we had talked about your final decision in the Legendary Edition. Because I know we both chose Synthesis without influencing each other in the Reignite playthrough. Did you choose Synthesis in the Legendary Edition playthrough as well?
No, because I had just chosen Synthesis for Reignite. And so I was finishing it with my spouse next to me, and I looked at him and I said, I don't want to hear it. And then I chose Destroy. Because my spouse is very insistent that Synthesis is the only right answer and that anything else is a war crime. And I don't want to hear it. I just want to see a different ending. Get off my dick about it. Just go away. So for the Legendary Edition, I was much more invested in like completing the mission I set out to complete, which was to destroy the Reapers. And also like the idea of what would your different squad mates do, and are you going to emulate them or are you going to make a different decision? So like Garrus would for sure choose Destroy, and Garrus is always my go-to romance. And also Captain Dadmiral would definitely choose Destroy, and like he's my dad.
That's fantastic.
Oogie, oogie, oogie. So.
Is Synthesis the control one?
No, that control is the separate one where you can take control of the Geth. Or take control of the Reapers.
The Reapers.
Oh. See,
I too wanted to say Geth, and I was like, no, that's wrong.
So I chose Destroy as well, which is just hilarious that we both
That's
chose.
really funny. Stop copying me.
Technically, I beat it before you did, so. But I chose Destroy because the way I played Shepard this time was I still tried to do it as if I were Shepard, but I tried to make some different decisions and just see where this fantasy story goes. And so I chose Destroy as well. Abu, what did you choose?
I also chose Destroy.
Wow.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
clearly...
Bunch of war criminals on this podcast.
Right? So much blood on our collective hands. Yeah, I clearly messed something up in trying to get all of the warp points that I needed for Synthesis. Because I thought I had enough, and then I got to the ending, and I was only given a binary choice between Destroy and Control. And I was pretty conflicted about Control, because I had a lot of questions about what it would mean and what the future would hold and what it would do to my Shepard. Because the Star Child only explains like, oh, your body will die, but you will be uploaded or whatever, and then you will control all the Geth. I didn't know if that meant my Shepard was immortal forever, and then I was like, who am I to think that I should be able to wield this power? Like, is that too much power for one man? And so I just had too many questions about what control would entail. And while Destroy was much more heartbreaking considering I had saved the Geth in that playthrough, considering Joker and Edie's relationship and what that probably means for Edie. Ultimately, I decided destroy was the only way the cycle was going to be broken, the cycle of the Reapers. And while it might be destructive for a generation or two for the species in the galaxy, my hope is that people would come together and rebuild. And so I kind of banked on this optimistic hope for all the species in the galaxy and went for destroy.
I kind of intended, I felt dumb. I was sitting there and I was like, wait, which one was which? Wait, which one's the control and which one's the, because I didn't have the synthesis option either. So I'm like, I think this one was, I think I want to destroy. I think I do. And I think that was this one. And then I was like, oh, I'm controlling them now. That wasn't the destroy. But I was kind of okay with it. I was like, oh, this is kind of nice, I guess. I don't know. There wasn't really there wasn't a perfect option, right? So I was like, yeah, okay, I'm okay with this. I'm comfortable with it, but I kind of fell into it.
Yeah, it wasn't until I watched a documentary recently that there's actually a fourth option. You can decline it all as Shepard, and then the Reapers destroy, take over everything. Like Shepard can just say,
terrible option.
Yeah. Shepard just removes himself from the equation. I say him because I played a male Shepard, and then the world essentially ends ish, or
That's
the cycle
a bitch
happens.
move.
Yeah,
that's a bitch move. You're just like, well, I don't want to decide because I don't want to, have that responsibility. So I'll just, I'll have done this for nothing. I'll have done these 3 games, and then I'll just say, nah, I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't feel like it.
Yeah, it's kind of a heartbreaking scene because it pans to this underground vault, and it's a recording of Liara, basically saying, basically doing what the Beacon did for Shepard, relaying, this was our species. This is how our war with the Reapers went. My name is Liara Tassoni. This is our message to you in the previous cycle. Please do better than us. It's actually a pretty heartbreaking and dark ending.
Oh my God.
Wow. Yeah. So that's what I love about these games is that I always feel like I'm discovering something new. Even if it's not new missions I found, I feel like there's so many layers to this game. And I think that's what just makes this a special game. And it's really heartening to hear that someone who likes games and is playing modern games came to this with not a lot of foreknowledge and still really enjoyed it. There's no surprise that Abu, Frankie, and I all adored this game because we've all spoken at length on several different podcasts about why. But it's pretty cool, Katie, to have you here also to see what there is to love about this game. Nothing to do with the Legendary Edition, but I'm kind of curious. Do you have any interest in diving into Dragon Age now that you've played Mass Effect and seen it?
I do. Also, it was basically my summer of Mass Effect, and it was one of my favorite gaming experiences, ever. I am all in. I got to play Andromeda. I was like, I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to play Andromeda. But I have tried to play Dragon Age Inquisition before, and kind of similar. I bounced off.
Right.
But now I'm like,
Same.
I gotta try it again now because I'm like, well, I don't expect it to be. I don't expect for me to feel the same way as I did about this.
Right.
But I have a lot more faith that I'll enjoy it. So I feel like I'll give it a better shot than I did the first 2 times I've tried. And I'm like, nah, I can't do it. But yeah, I'm gonna dive back in.
I did that too. I bounced off Inquisition the first time. Then I played through Inquisition and enjoyed it after I gave it a better shot. And then I recently, this year, at the beginning of the year, went back and played Origins and Dragon Age 2 on PC and fell in love with them as well. And so I think Dragon Age is a harder pill to swallow just because the worlds are so massive. And especially with Inquisition, it's the Hinterlands problem. You get to that first open area and you want to do everything. And it's like, I'm bored now. There's too much,
Yeah, Inquisition really doesn't start until you get to the keep. And it takes a long while to get to the keep, unfortunately.
Is there a certain Dragon Age that you all recommend starting with? Would it be Inquisition?
Yeah.
And just powering through?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the most modern. The other Dragon Ages...
The dissenting voice from afar. Origins.
Well, okay, here's why. I feel like if you start with the Inquisition, you're kind of thrust into the world without really knowing a lot of context. And I feel like the context makes you more interested in going through. And I feel like that context, that lore, makes you more emotionally invested in this world because you've already lived in it in a couple of different, like, lifetimes, so to speak.
Yeah.
So in Origins, you're playing the Warden, and it really sets up the world for you. And in Dragon Age 2, you're playing the Champion, and the Champion's actions are really what kicks off Inquisition. So, in my opinion, start with Origins and just know that it's an older game. It's going to be a different experience, but it's also a darker game. It's also very spooky.
Interesting. Is it any shorter than Inquisition?
I think it is, yes.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, also, I'll say this, what makes Dragon Age interesting, and I promise I'll go back to what we're here to talk about, is that it's not a Shepard story. You're 3 different characters in all 3 games, but the world is cohesive. It's the same world. And the Champion from the second game makes an appearance as an NPC in the third game. Like, all of that kind of stuff is really cool and ties it together.
And depending on the outcome of one, the Warden gets a reference.
Yes, that's also true, too. Yeah.
So it's
like,
similar. It, like, loads in your
Yeah, your
playthrough.
previous data. Yep.
Okay.
It's just you don't play the same character all 3 times.
Your world state.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But bringing it back to Mass Effect,
The whole point.
the whole point of why we're here, I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else that anyone wants to talk about that they feel like they want to share about the Legendary Edition? I am endlessly happy that I have this on a modern console. You know, playing it on PC was infamously a time for me because BioWare didn't believe in controller support on PC for some stupid ass reason, and I'm not a mouse and keyboard gamer if I can avoid it. And so, like, just having it be cohesive and now being able to play Andromeda for Season 4 and using the similar control scheme because they change it a little. It's nice. It's my favorite game series of all time, besides Chrono Trigger, which is my favorite game of all time. This series, and like I can't even separate it anymore, and that's why I'm glad it's kind of one package is the Legendary Edition. All 3 games are one of my favorite games of all time because they're so inextricably connected that I can't even separate them. And I think, like we were talking about before, that the DLC feels required. I played 3 when it came out and was disappointed in it. If I had gotten the version of 3 that people are getting in the Legendary Edition, I would have not been disappointed because it just feels like a more complete experience because there's more time to spend with these characters. And like Katie said something that I've been saying for a long time, having played these games more, the ending doesn't matter. The whole game isn't the ending. Like, the whole third game is the ending. And, like, it's so much clearer to see that with all of that DLC and everything else. And so I'm just really glad that we have the Legendary Edition. I'm looking forward to whatever Mass Effect next is. They've announced that they are making another one to take place after Andromeda. Like, we don't know any details about it, but, like, I'm excited. And I'm excited for you, Katie, to jump into Andromeda. I am playing it for the first time for the podcast. I didn't play it when it came out. And Frankie is shepherding me through the experience, and there was a lot of hate for it in the early days because it wasn't the trilogy. It was something different. And it also had a lot of bugs and glitches. Mm-hmm. Most of that stuff is gone now. And so I'm curious what your take is as a brand new Mass Effect fan, and if it'll be similar to what I've experienced so far. But does anyone have like any concluding thoughts they want to share about the Legendary Edition?
BioWare needs to add in a color wheel for hair. That's it. That's all I want. Just a color wheel. You don't even have to, like, put in specifically blue, but let me fucking pick the color.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
That's all I want. One thing. You want one thing. One thing's not hard, right?
Right, exactly.
I just want to say I don't really have any other thoughts. Like I said, it's like the most developed world historically and character-wise and everything that I've played through, and I thought it was remarkable. I will just say no one prepared me for how much the like proposed sexy time would bump up for Mass Effect 2. Because I was like a little bit I was not far into Mass Effect 2, and then Jacob is basically like, so we fuck now? I was like, whoa, what? And then also Shepard is much more sexually forward. She's just all out there. She's like, so you into this? I was like, whoa, Shepard. You were like quietly not flirting with Kaidan in Mass Effect 1, and now you're just like aggressive. I kind of liked it, but I was not prepared.
Shepard is no longer under military control.
That's true. No fucks. No fucks given. So yeah, I was like, whoa. Yeah, but other than that, no, I don't have any other things to say.
What about you, Abu?
I think my only takeaway after this conversation is that I really want to go play Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now I'm really tempted to also download and fire up Andromeda, because I played it the day it came out. I was so excited. I got it as a birthday present. I took the day off work. I did the whole thing, played through it, played deep into the night, completed the game, and have not touched it since. And I was extremely disappointed with it. But I kind of want to revisit it after all of these years alongside you guys and like text all of you. Share my experience.
I legit might start it tonight. I think I will.
Awesome. Yes. Well, I mean, Katie, we have a 4th season that we are into. So if you get far enough into the game and you're like, oh, I want to talk about this thing, please reach out to Frankie because they are organizing everything, as I don't want to be spoiled for anything. And Abu, we will happily, of course, have you back. We got to do a forfer, right?
Right.
We gotta
right.
come back.
Yeah,
You've
I already
been
got
on
the
every
hat
season.
trick. I might as well just go 4 for 4, you know?
Well, thank you both for joining us. Thank you for having this conversation. Like, Frankie knows I've wanted to do some kind of roundtable for the Legendary Edition, but I didn't want to like dissect it or like nitpick. I wanted to just celebrate this incredible remaster. Didn't give us everything that we wanted, but it's still, I think, a great testament to what these games are. And I appreciate you both joining us. I, of course, appreciate my incredible co-host, Frankie, for letting me do this, I guess, because they could have said no and I might have listened. But this has been a lot of fun. Why don't we start to wrap up? And to start, Katie and then Abu, why don't you share where folks can find you, find the stuff that you do? If you don't want to be found on the internet, that's legit. Like, I get it. But if you do want to be found on the internet and your stuff that you do, why don't you tell folks now?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I am Lesperak, Lesperak. I'm up on there. And then also Cutscenes is also on Twitter, cutscenes_pod. And like I said, our season 3 premiere just happened last week on the 28th. So you can come check that out. We're on all major podcasting platforms, Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast. And yeah, so come check us out. That's about it. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I was so excited. I had not had the chance to discuss. I talked a lot because I was like, I'm so excited and I want to talk about Mass Effect. And I hadn't gotten the chance to dive in. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
It was our pleasure. You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, Katie, it was actually really interesting for me to just sit here and listen to your experience as well. Because it's been a very long time that I have talked to anyone who's played Mass Effect for the first time. I feel like at this point, either I've convinced all of my friends or the internet has convinced all of my friends to play Mass Effect. So it's rare for me to come across someone who is so fresh to the experience. So thank you for sharing that. As far as my work goes, obviously I have spoken time and time again on this podcast about my work, but I'll say it once more. I run the Lore Party Podcast Network. We have 5 shows now on the network. Our most recent show, Those Who Play Create, that interview show I mentioned at the top, just launched, so definitely go check that out as well. But I do want to particularly shout out Gom Jabbar, which is our Dune podcast. It's our deep dive lore exploration of the Dune books, the Dune extended universe, the movies, any future adaptations. There's an HBO show in the works. We hear. So all of those things, my co-host Leo and I go deep on. We have a spoiler-free 10-part book club series. So if you are interested in Dune, now that the movie's out, maybe you saw the movie, maybe you want to read the book before you go see the movie, that spoiler-free 10-part series is the perfect companion to your read of Dune. So hopefully we can help you experience that universe and jump in feet first. And of course, we we'll have released, by the time everyone hears this episode, our extensive deep dive review / discussion / exploration of the Denis Villeneuve Dune film as well. So if you saw the movie and you want to hear us geek out about it for probably 3 hours,
Wow.
that'll be up and live on the Gom Jabbar feed. So loreparty.com is where you can find all of our shows and learn more about them and subscribe to them. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. That's where you can find all of the amazing stuff that me and my team work on.
Awesome. Thank you both. Everyone go check out all of that stuff from both of them. It's all excellent. I've been involved on some level with all of it, and so that just automatically elevates it, obviously. But enough about me. There are a bunch of places folks can find us, right, Frankie?
Yep. If you like what you heard here, follow us on social media. We're at ReignitePod on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram, facebook.com/reignitepod, or you can send us an email at reignitepod@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at iHoardLibraries and Matt at DJ_Stormageddon. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher if you can. It helps us get seen so other people can find us.
We're also members of the Certain Point of View Podcast Network. You can visit certainpov.com to find more nerdy podcasts, each with a unique point of view. You can also find a permanent invite link to our Discord server right there on the website and join in the conversation. I do want to, at this point, shout out, of course, Katie, Abu, and Frankie's incredible episodes of Side Quests, which are part of the Certain POV Podcast Network. Katie's done 2 episodes, Abu's done 1, but promised me at some point in the future to do a second, and same for Frankie. So go check those out. If you like gaming and like hearing people talk about games they love, you can find that where Fun and Games is.
If you're enjoying Andromeda shenanigans, then you should catch me over on Archives of the Dragon every other Monday, where my spouse, Professor John Bradley Lestrange, leads us through the wild unknown outside the Helios cluster in Andromeda. You can find that at twitch.tv/Archives of the Dragon.
You can also find everything that I do at www.djstormageddon.com. All of my podcasts, my Ko-fi, even my merch store, all of which are also a great way to support this show and all the other shows that I do. Again, just go to djstormageddon.com and check all of that out.
We'd like to thank Red Spinks for our It's Okay to Be Marshmallow t-shirt on Redbubble featuring our favorite marshmallow, Kaden Alenko. You can find more of his work at Chaos Does Art on Instagram.
We'd also like to thank Carter's husband for developing more amazing t-shirt designs, which you can find at certainpov.com or on Teespring.
Thank you to David Boyle for redesigning our logo like a champ. And lastly, thank you to Dan Bull for letting us use the Mass Effect rap for our theme music for this very special episode. I'm Frankie.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Abu Zafar.
And I'm Katie Lesbronze.
We should go.
You're listening to Reignite. I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.
Hey everyone, I'm Abu.
And I'm Leo.
And we're here to tell you about Gom Jabbar, our brand new podcast all about Dune.
Gom Jabbar is your guide to Frank Herbert's massive sci-fi universe. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in everything from Frank's iconic novels to the adaptations on film and TV.
And here's the thing. We do spoiler-filled deep dives as well as introductory non-spoiler episodes. So there's something for everyone.
You know, look, Dune is complicated. There are crazy words like mentats, like Tleilaxu, and of course, Gom Jabbar.
Our goal is to help you understand these words and many more that we can't pronounce.
It's a theme. So find Gom Jabbar on your favorite podcast platform. We can't wait to share our love of the Dune universe, and we'll see you on the Golden Path.
Hey, I'm Jacob McCord.
I'm Katie Lesbronze.
And I'm Travis Colnett.
We are hosting a brand new podcast called Cutscenes.
There are tons of video game podcasts and tons of TV film podcasts, but we're going to bring you the intersection of both and talk about video game, movies, and TV.
I know what you're thinking. Aren't most of them not very good? Wrong. Some of them are fine. And we're going to tell you all about them.
Make sure to subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice, follow us on Twitter at cutscenes_pod, and most importantly, give us a listen.
See you soon.
Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast.
Hey there, my name's Abu Zafar, and I'm the creator of the Lore Party podcast. It's a show about our favorite video game universes and the stories they tell. What does that mean exactly? Well, we don't do game reviews or first impressions, and we don't talk about gameplay or the latest news in the gaming industry. Our main focus is with the lore, the stories, the characters, and the worlds that we jump into every time that we fire up our favorite games. If that sounds like your cup of tea, just search Lore Party on your favorite podcast platform and check out some of our episodes. Thanks for listening.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.